Listener discretion is advised.
So in 1986, John Morris asked a friend of his, a man named Newell Sessions, who lived on a ranch.
Never trust a Newell.
A Newell.
Or a Sessions, let's be honest.
Yeah. We've learned that the hard way.
Well, Newell is not the worst person in this case.
Okay.
Okay.
So Newell said, John Morris asked his friend Newell, who lived on a ranch in Thermopolis, Wyoming, which
What? Okay.
I'm sure is beautiful, if he could leave some possessions with him for safekeeping while he left town for an unspecified period of time.
I bet they're bones. We hold my bones. We actually just had a house guest, and we are holding a lot of bones for him, but they are animal bones.
You're a really cute grifter house guest.
Mm-hmm.
Luck.
You're not grifter, drifter.
Drifter. He's not a grifter.
Is
He's currently living out of a van.
Oh,
There's
okay.
a difference.
A grifter is a scam artist
Yep.
drifter, and a drifter is just a drifter.
Like
Yeah.
your dream friend,
Yes.
Kenyon's dream friend, the Floridian psychic / grifter.
Sure.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. Okay, so will you hold my shit for me? I'm getting out of Dodge. Can't
Hold my
wait, I'll be back.
Hold my bones.
So Newell agreed. Amongst these possessions was a padlocked old steamer trunk
Nope.
sitting in an outdoor shed.
Nope.
I think
There's a
we all
mummy in there.
see
Guarantee
where
it.
this is going.
Tell you right now, there's a mummy.
6 years later, in 1992, so hasn't heard from his friend in 6 years.
And
Oh,
hasn't
Jesus.
busted open all of his
Nope.
stuff. If Aaron, our friend, doesn't come back in like 2 months or at least check in, I'm taking all of those bones.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Yeah.
I would get, if either of you were like, will you hold my shit? I'm going to be gone for like some amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
I would rifle through your shit within 48 hours. I'll be honest.
Guaranteed. That's what you left Kenyon's boyfriend box at your parents' house, and we went through it immediately. Immediately. You were barely out the door.
You guys made videos of rifling
We
through
did.
it.
You had journals in there.
That you sent to some of the boys in question.
Oh,
What? I
absolutely.
don't remember that.
It happened.
Okay.
Amanda does. Sorry,
Yikes.
Bucks.
Oh, okay. I do remember that.
Not that we dated, but whatever. Okay, so Newell is a good friend, unlike you. And
Or an idiot. Newell
Took-
might be an idiot.
yeah. 6 years later, in 1992, when his friend John had still not returned to claim his items, Sessions decided to open the dang trunk and see what was inside.
Good, because that's fucking rude.
Mm-hmm.
He used a blowtorch to remove the lock, the padlock, but he was not prepared for what was inside.
Bones.
And almost
I'm prepared.
an almost entire but not intact human skeleton.
Like totally skeletonized or like junk hanging on?
Totally skeletonized.
It'd been in like a hot shed for 6
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
For-
it wasn't any kind of soup?
For way longer than 6 years, and we will get to it.
Ooh.
So at his wife Daisy's urging, because Newell was initially prepared to simply bury that shit and keep his mouth shut.
Newell's a really fucking good friend.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Way
Get
better
you a
than me.
Newell. We need to do a vow renewal on this friendship.
So his wife Daisy was like, no.
We're going to the police. Yeah.
Narc.
So he contacted the local sheriff's department, which began working to identify the remains and figure out how they had ended up in John Morris's steamer trunk. So they managed to track down John Morris, who was now living in Texas, but he claimed to be shocked that his trunk, that he'd casually dumped on a friend before hightailing it out of town, contained human remains.
Well, there were no bones in there when I left with it padlocked.
Weird.
Right?
Sounds like a you problem. Sounds like a Newell problem.
Sounds
That's Newell's to me.
That is Newell's to me. He told investigators that he had purchased the trunk years ago from a yard sale in either Wyoming, Illinois, Iowa, Ohio, or Oklahoma.
In
He
one of
couldn't-
the 50 states.
He couldn't remember which.
To be
Good
fair,
God.
a lot of people don't know the difference between those states.
Right. But he claimed that he'd never actually opened it, in the whole time that he'd owned it. He claimed he bought it closed.
Padlocked. Okay.
He also claimed to have been in possession of the trunk since around 1973.
Oh, and it's what, 80s?
It's 1992 now.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the sheriff's department was suspicious
Yeah.
of Morris's story.
Not buying it.
It seemed extremely unlikely that he would have been in possession of the trunk for over a decade or 2 decades without ever having opened it. Also, there's a photo on the drive. So, this thing was not in great shape. So, there's no reason to, be keeping it.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not like a collectible.
No, look at it. It's, almost entirely rusted out. It is.
It looks like there's a hole in the top.
It's a
Yeah.
mess.
It's trash.
She's
It's-
a mess.
I collect old fucking
Trash.
trunks that are worthless but cute for
Okay.
decor purposes.
Uh-huh.
And this is not that.
No, it's not.
But the authorities had no hard evidence to prove that Morris knew more than he was letting on. Meanwhile, the state crime lab analyzed the bones and officially ruled the death a homicide after discovering a bullet lodged in the skull and evidence of another gunshot wound to the chest.
Ooh.
More specifically, they found a .25 caliber bullet fired from a gun that had first been manufactured in 1904, but had not been available in the U.S. until 1908.
Okay.
Not incredibly helpfully, but still, they concluded that the murder could have taken place any time between 1908 and 1980. He's saying he had it since 1973, so if we want to take him at his word, then any time between 1908 and 1973, which is still quite the time span for unidentified remains.
What happened in 1980?
I think maybe they estimated that that's how long it would take to reach that level of
Oh, decomp or whatever.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
For them to
there
be
wa-
clean bones.
Yeah.
So they were put into this box, skeletonized, clean bones.
That I don't know.
Okay.
The trunk itself, actually, I do know, but at this
Are you
point,
glad I asked?
I'm
this-
glad you asked.
at this point in our tale, we don't know.
Oh.
So the trunk itself provided some help with further narrowing down the timeline. It was determined to be most likely from the 1930s and to have been issued to someone who served in the U.S. Armed Forces during the interwar period.
Okay.
So the trunk itself wasn't made before the 30s, and it was probably given to someone who served in the army later than that. Furthermore, a bag from the supermarket chain, Lucy's fave, Hy-Vee.
Oh.
I love Hy-Vee.
I know.
Its management is kind of problematic, but I still like it.
Was found in the trunk along with the remains, which was determined to have been produced in the 1950s. So the newest item inside the trunk is this Hy-Vee bag from the 50s. So they're guessing that they're trying to narrow it down even further. So now we've got
Sure.
between the 50s and 1973.
Okay.
And possibly the region, because they don't have Hy-Vees in just anywhere.
Well, aren't you just so astute?
Are you glad I asked?
So, an analysis of the skeleton led the crime lab to conclude that it belonged to a white male who had been in his 50s or 60s at the time of his death. He was estimated to have been about 5'8", so 5'10". Also, some portions of the skeleton were missing, so some lower leg bones and a hand, which Lucy now owns,
Like
Right.
this.
Good God.
which led investigators to think that the skeleton may have initially been buried before being dug up at a later date and then hidden in the trunk.
Okay.
Oh.
The crime lab also used the skull to create a digital rendering of the victim's face, which is haunting. And
That's
there's a
what
photo on the
that
drive.
is. You have to go into the drive to get
Oh
to the
my
notes.
God.
And it's like sitting in a leather armchair. It's so deeply upsetting.
It's wearing a scarf. It looks like Play-Doh.
It's
it's
not
Like
good.
not
Play-Doh.
It's not good. It was an early 90s or mid 90s facial rendering from a skull.
Oh my
It's
God.
bad.
For anyone listening, highly recommend going to the blog and looking at this fucking picture.
It's
Highly
very
it is
creepy.
haunting.
But this information still left authorities with barely anything to go on when it came to actually trying to find the identity of the victim. Plus, if John Morris was to be believed, they didn't even know which state to begin their search in. And so the case remained cold for years. Further complicating matters, John Morris, he'd moved to Texas from Wyoming and then moved to Mississippi. And then after he was contacted by police about this trunk, he died by suicide,
Oh.
eliminating what investigators believed to be their only potential source for more information about the victim. So at this point, they're like
who do
pretty
we talk
seriously
to?
zeroed in on John Morris.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then, in the early 1990s, the case of the unidentified bones was featured on Unsolved Mysteries,
Get
which
it.
resulted in the sheriff's department receiving more than 600 phone calls to their tip line.
Whoa.
Unfortunately, none of these tips proved fruitful in terms of leads on this case. But then, in October of 2017, 25 years after Newell Sessions discovered the bones,
Wow.
the sheriff's department received a surprising phone call.
Oh, jeez.
A woman from Waukee, Iowa. Did I say that right?
Waukee. That is literally 10 miles from me. It's a
Ooh.
suburb of Des Moines. Cool.
Named Shelley Statler, had learned about the unidentified remains and believed that they may have belonged to her grandfather. Statler had been aware of the story of the bones in the trunk for years, since she was like 19. She remembered seeing a story in the Des Moines Register when she was about 19 about the bones that had been found in Wyoming, which theorized that the Hy-Vee bag possibly meant that the remains were from Iowa.
Oh,
my
yeah,
Oh my God.
baby. Hy-Vee to the rescue.
I knew
Mama
Lucy-
knows her grocery.
I knew Lucy would be this pleased with herself, but it's still a beautiful thing to
I
watch.
had nothing to do with this case. I am
know.
pleased with myself.
So
I think you solved it.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. At the time, Statler's father had made an offhand comment to her about how the remains might belong to her grandfather. She later explained, quote, "I was young and didn't pay much attention to it. As I got older, I became more interested in family history and kept coming back to the story." So basically, Shelley's maternal grandfather had disappeared when her mother was a child, and no one had ever found out what happened to him.
Oh my God.
And they didn't think that he had like run off because like he didn't like take any of his shit with him,
So
basically.
he vanished,
Yeah.
like suspiciously.
Yeah, he just like vanished. Statler used the crime lab's digital recreation of the victim's face, which
the horrible recreation.
to
Got
make a
it.
collage with family photos from her mother's side and believed that she saw a strong resemblance, which sounds far-fetched, but go on the drive and look at a picture of Shelley and then look at a picture of the creepy rendering.
The nose is I see it.
The nose and the mouth and it kind of really fits.
The mouth, the thin lips.
The mouth,
the
the
shape.
cheeks, the whatever this line is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can see that.
It kind of. I was surprised that anyone could see any kind of resemblance to this rendering, but like then when you see it lined up next to a person, you kind of see it.
And it's also
Okay.
like a granddaughter and her grandfather. Like, it's
Right.
not going to be like
Identical.
siblings or anything, but
Right.
I can see some features. Yeah.
Right. So when she called the sheriff's department, she requested that she be able to submit a sample of her mother's DNA to compare against the skeleton to see if it proved her theory correct.
Okay.
Indeed, DNA testing showed the sample to be extremely, remarkably similar to
Oh
the
my God.
unidentified bones, which were now conclusively identified as belonging to Joseph Mulvaney, a World War II veteran and railroad worker who had gone missing from Des Moines in 1963.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
This is wild.
That's
Right?
bonks.
Details of Joseph Mulvaney's life are sparse, but it is known that he grew up in Illinois and that after serving in World War II, he moved to California for work for a railroad company. This is where he met and married a woman named Mary Alice McLeese, who had a son from a previous relationship named John Morris.
Oh.
So he murdered his stepfather. Oh. Shelly, you cracked the case.
Shelly, yes, Shelly.
Queen Shelly.
So Joseph and Mary Alice had 3 children together, and in the early 60s, they moved to Des Moines, where Mary Alice was originally from. But in 1963, Joseph Mulvaney disappeared, although no official missing persons report was ever filed.
Hold my trunk.
According to Shelley Statler, she believed that her grandfather had been shot and killed and buried in the backyard of the house he had recently bought with his wife, and that the body had remained there until his stepson, John Morris, eventually came back to dig it up and hide it in his steamer trunk and take it with him to fucking Wyoming.
Who did he think killed him?
Oh, we'll get to it.
Oh my God.
Well, I sure hope you liked that clip. If you did like that clip, make sure you are subscribing to our YouTube channel, leaving us a nice review, and joining us on Patreon for even more video content, audio content, salacious content all around. Come join us. Treat yourself.